Hello there, this is Illiterate. My name is Evan.
My name is Taylor. I read a book this week.
I watched a movie. This week we are covering Judas and the Black Messiah. It stars Daniel Kaluuya. How do you say this, Taylor?
Yeah, Kaluuya, yeah.
You'll know him from Get Out and Black Panther, starring alongside him Lakeith Stanfield. You'll know him from Knives Out and Selma, Sorry to Bother You, alongside Martin Sheen and Jesse Plemons. This was a terrifying movie. Honestly, my first reaction for it. I thought this movie was going to be a little blasé and a little bit of a downer. It is the story of Bill O'Neill as he infiltrates the Black Panther Party per the FBI agent Mitchell and J. Edgar Hoover. They follow party chairman Fred Hampton as he ascends and falls in love as the battle rages for O'Neill's soul, and he's in the midst of it. So Fred Hampton is going to be a lot of our focus here today.
Daniel Kaluuya said in an interview, he was like, there's a lot of information about how he died, but not so much about how he lived. So hopefully we can illuminate some of that. I didn't know much of anything about this at all.
Yeah, I didn't know much about any of this until recently. There was another film that is getting a bunch of awards as well, the Trial of the Chicago 7, which Fred Hampton is also plays a supporting part in that. So I didn't know anything about this story until that film came out in the fall. So I started researching a little bit about Fred Hampton about then and realized that this film, Judas and the Black Messiah, all about him, would be coming out now. So again, I was saying this. I thought this was going to be, maybe a more blasé, more about his life, how he lived. And I did not expect this to be as grippingly terrifying as it was. I mean, this is near a horror movie. Even sequences that are not meant to be tense or stressful because of the nature of it, because of the nature of the subject matter. Perhaps I'm reading into things, but the whole movie had me on edge in ways that I did not expect. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait to uncover more about the true story here behind Fred Hampton.
You mentioned the two main players, Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, but they were actually sharing the screen in Get Out. They were both in that film in 2017. Oh,
you're so right. I forgot about that. I'm so sorry. Yes, of course. How could I forget? How can I forget? Lakeith Stanfield plays the first one where you start to realize that maybe there's a trance. And he grabs one of the main characters and starts screaming at them to actually get out. I think the titular line comes from him.
Right.
But he's been all over the place lately. They get in Atlanta. I'd be remiss not to mention Atlanta. Huge success on FX. He's awesome. He's also in Selma. He's in a few things we've already covered.
And Stanfield plays Bill O'Neill, like you said, the informant, the undercover agent for the FBI. And it really took a toll on him personally, seeing some interviews as he's talking about playing this role, like you're talking about how terrifying and tragic it is. Like the scene where he's wearing the wire, his hands were tingling, and after the shoot, he was hospitalized with high blood pressure.
Oh my God.
He sort of joked about it in a way, being like, actors are presumptuous about how it affects them and whatever. But he was like, this really did do a number on me personally, getting into, and just the sacrifice it is to play somebody like this. The scene where he actually has to betray him and drug him. The makeup artist came to the director and said, just so you know, Lakeith has been throwing up in his trailer and crying because you have to act like he doesn't want to do this as a person.
That's all really amazing to hear, actually, because as we've been, going through Black History Month, and even before that, covering things like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, this film stands out in a way that some of these others don't, with its air of authenticity. Mm-hmm. It really makes sense to me to hear how much people were pouring into this, to hear him breaking down in his trailer. This is a man torn between two lives, and it was real life. So he's retracing the steps of somebody who really did these things. So, and to take it with that reverence and that seriousness is what this job calls for. And that's why some people joke about the job of an actor. And so you walk on set and like, okay, action. I'm so ashamed. Cut. Where's my trailer? It's okay. Ha ha ha. That, yes, there's definitely that. then there's things like this, which I would hope that this would be at the forefront of what we strive to do with the medium. And so if this is really the job of an actor, what the actor is really doing and bringing to the camera is something that I don't want to do every day. It's something I don't think you want to do every day. I think it's something that we don't give enough credence to when we think about how lush and, Hollywood life. Listen, like, let's take it again. What Lakeith Stanfield was doing in his trailer before they shot the scene.
Yeah. Like you said, in terms of bringing the authenticity to it. So Akua Nyeri, she changed her name. She is Fred Hampton's partner in the film.
Mm-hmm.
She still alive. She was at the assassination and survived, and she was 9 months pregnant. So 4 weeks later, she had Fred Hampton Jr., and so both of them contributed majorly and got the blessing of making this film, because there were lots of people that had come to them beforehand and they just thought it wasn't going to be done justice, or it wasn't going to be done with any sort of reverence, or was cashing in on things. Wow. So this was the project that they gave the green light to. So that's where you're talking about, oh, this doesn't feel fake in any way, because they were so much involved. And in terms of Daniel Kaluuya's understanding of the reality of it, he went to an opera coach to train his voice to reproduce Hampton's, because that's what he's known for, is his commanding musical cadence. Because if you're on set 12 hours a day doing speeches, you can't damage your voice,
right,
or lose it in any way. And then Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., like I said, he was involved. He took him to a place in Chicago and said, if you want to play the chairman, I want to see what you're made of, essentially, not in those exact words, but they went to K-Town in Chicago where 11 people were shot just the night before. Not as like a hazing thing, but he's like, he wants him to go to the valley where the people are at.
Go to the front lines. The war's still waging. I can take you there.
And not to put him in harm's way, but it's like, this is what you can't read in the books.
Yeah.
Connect, like, look, and Daniel Kaluuya is like, I'm here to look with you, not at you. Like,
take a step, like, literally in his shoes. Like, this is an incident. This is precisely an incident of what he was talking about. That's terrifying.
So
that's you don't get that opportunity to do something. I mean, the biopics and historical films all over the place, but to really have an opportunity to step your toe into the conflict for real, because it's still happening. Can you imagine that as an artist, as an actor, taking that on? I mean,
well, Kaluuya also said he was like that. He wasn't afraid. He was like, it was the opposite of fear is love.
Oh, I love
and he was
it.
like,
that's perfect. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
And he was like, the way that he described it, he was like, there was a certain bounciness to the street. There's just like a bounciness in the air, like things are hyped up a bit. But he was like, I wasn't afraid being there. I wasn't.
Oh, it's perfect. That's pure. And that I want to bring out a moment in the film. Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers visit the Young Patriots, which is a group of white men, Southern supporters. And immediately you get the idea that there's going to be conflict here until Fred Hampton starts to speak. And as soon as he does, you start to understand. And it was in this scene I started to understand what the film was trying to tell me about Fred Hampton and about the Black Panther Party, is that the answer to a question might be fear from the other side. That is your chance to insert with love. That is your chance to put your foot forward and say, aren't we better? Wouldn't we be better together? And aren't our goals actually in this direction? You got it immediately, because if you don't know who Fred Hampton is, he's the leader of the Black Panthers. You don't know, you've only ever seen Black Panthers in like Forrest Gump or something. Like, you immediately are expecting some hard-nosed retort, some line of defense, and we're going to go to a conflict right here. But that's not how he answers him. He answers him with love. And it's really astounding, and it's not what you expect. Playing with those expectations for ignorant, audiences like myself, it was beautiful. It's absolutely astounding.
And so in terms of the production, the director, Shaka King, he said a big piece of it is, like you said, correct the record of the Black Panther Party in terms of the assumption is, they're terrorists, which is horrible. But it's like or they're focused on militancy as opposed to a vision for a better world, free healthcare, breakfast, decent housing, like things that are socialist in nature, but what most people or a lot of people just espouse as general good living. Like, they weren't just there to take over everything in sight, which is what
proponent for decent human life for the Black community and everybody. Where it's so odd because, I guess it's posed coming from the South, where the Black Panther Party is seen as this almost counter answer to the KKK. When that would be such a no. that's and this film it would be perfect to help realign those thoughts and ideas of where these organizations line, because I was seeing so much more in this charity here and the social good and the work that they were really, really trying to do. The socialist work they were trying to do was something that I'd never really been taught or exposed to before. So this was a beautiful way to see it.
So here's how the writers got exposed to it. The Lucas brothers, who are more known as comedians, they learned about Chairman Fred Hampton during an African-American studies course in college. They read the book which I read, The Assassination of Fred Hampton, other books about the Black Panther Party, stumbled upon this 1980s documentary, Eyes on the Prize, where it's revealed, oh, this guy, Bill O'Neill, was this informant. And they're like, oh, that's our end to this story. Because Fred Hampton is like a very complete person, but Bill O'Neill is the one that has the conflict within him. So that's kind of where they saw, oh, this is...
It's perfect. The movie just really portrays that. This is all from Bill O'Neill's perspective, infiltrating the Black Panther Party, towing a line. He believes in what they're doing, but he's got to survive. This is a survival story for Bill O'Neill, and he has to make the decisions of what is best for his survival, as he knows that that he perhaps agrees exactly with what he's there doing in the Black Panther Party in person and soul. So you see everything from his point of view, while you get to see Fred Hampton live his life and be living and showing his actual nature, which is what they're trying to do, is actually paint a portrait of what this guy was like alive, not in how he died and what it meant and what happened after, but in how he lived. And to see it through Bill O'Neill's eyes and a conflicted point of view. Oh my God.
So they have this piece of Bill O'Neill. They start plugging away on the screenplay. They pitched it to A24, Netflix. The thing that they put it out to the universe as is Departed with COINTELPRO, the FBI subversive thing. So that's where the vibe that they're trying to go for. Will Burson, another writer, was separately working on a more comprehensive traditional biopic screenplay about Chairman Fred Hampton's life. And so they joined forces with Shaka King.
Oh, that's cool.
To put it all together.
I like
because
competing projects circling the same material, actually combining forces. I don't feel like I hear enough of that. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, but it definitely sticks more. And that's what they were able to get through with Warner Brothers, is the kind of The Departed with COINTELPRO. So it leans more in that direction, because that's what Shaka King was saying. He's like, people don't want dramas, mid-budget dramas. They're not going to go for that. So the way that we pitched it to them was this. So we can't deviate from that in a way. It was a lot of creative constraints to kind of put that out there. People are saying, why are you focusing on this guy who was a traitor as opposed to the person who was
because there's conflict. Because the conflict is inherent in this. And without a conflict, you don't have a story. You know what makes a story good? Conflict. Where else would you put the story?
Yeah. So that's what I said when they found that 1980s doc, Eyes on the Prize, with him saying, hey, I did this.
I think it's a gorgeous point of view. It's racking up the awards, but I wish more films had this concerted point of view from a conflicted point of view. It's absolutely incredible.
What they had was, in order to research, tons of books, articles, interviews, lots of things that are out of print. Because the problem is there was so much counterintelligence. Obviously, this story is about Bill O'Neill, who was a mole on the inside and then imploded everything. So there were informants that are rampant. So even talking to people that were involved, there's such a mistrust of outsiders or to even document it. There's not much in it. It reminded me of when we talked about Harriet Tubman, too, of her thing was to not have people know about her.
Right.
And if you had all of this chaos going on within your group, you would be reticent to put it down.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So Shaka King was saying, he's like, nothing beats the oral history of those involved. So that's most of where this stuff comes from. And like I said, Fred Hampton Jr. and his mom were on set 90% of the time.
Oh my God.
But that was the great challenge of how do you make it this film and the real life stuff. And this is the first thing that they're willing to give the go ahead on in terms of his legacy.
Well, it's certainly there's certainly room there. I can't hardly name another one that is
Right.
focused on it. They've been background characters and other things. I've already mentioned Forrest Gump, which is like the most prominent one, which is such a one dimensional look
Yeah.
at it. I've never really never I don't I'm not aware of another movie that has an inside look at the Black Panther Party. I wouldn't know where to turn
Yeah.
for a competing point of view here.
And then Shaka King was saying it with an interview on the Breakfast Club. He was like, I know the problems of this film. There's just too much history in
Yeah.
it. Like, he's like, if there is a criticism, he's like, I can't do everything on it. The interviewer was like, oh, there should be a limited series about the women in the Black Panther
Ooh,
Party,
yeah,
which is
I
also fascinating.
absolutely could see that.
So we'll get to,
Absolutely.
we'll get to some of that in the history. But I just wanted to go into really quickly the book that they're talking about, the assassination of Fred Hampton,
Yes.
and what that is. Because like you said, there really isn't that much information on this. The author is Jeffrey Haas. It's the only book really that I could find from somebody even involved. He interviewed members of the Hampton family researching the book. It mostly covers the trial and legal work afterward because he was one of the lawyers from the People's Law Office that were involved in defending.
I see.
But he was with Fred Hampton. He met him at the speech after he got out for the allegedly stealing the ice cream, which ended up not being true. He was the one who secured his release and then was involved in the case, which was not resolved until a settlement in 1982, 13 years later,
Oh my God.
where they granted $1.8 million to the 7 survivors and the family of the 2 that were killed in the raid.
Yeah, I think they originally they wanted something like 47 million, and then over that 13 years worked it all the way down. I mean, it's surprising that they even got paid at all to begin with, but
yeah. Well, and because they didn't even have the info on COINTELPRO, that didn't even come out until 1971. But there was new info as of December of 2020.
No way.
Just a couple months ago. There was a historian and writer, Aaron Leonard, who through his own research, because of the 2015 Freedom of Information Act, got redacted FBI copies of Mitchell's personnel file through several hundred pages of memos, reports. There are some that directly come from Hoover commending him on this plan. So now it's like the cat's completely out of the bag.
FBI agent Mitchell is played by Jesse Plemons. He's the one who is recruiting Bill O'Neill, Lakeith Stanfield's character, to infiltrate the Black Panther Party. Jesse Plemons, Agent Mitchell, answers to J. Edgar Hoover, played by Martin Sheen.
Right. And now, without a doubt, because Hoover's name is on these things saying, hey, good job with this. Like, it's undeniable that this is what happened here. But that was what took so long with the trial, was all of this. It was like, oh, the FBI is working on figuring it out. And it's like, well, no, they're actually covering it up.
Right.
You know,
Meanwhile, Fred Hampton is showing up to a court case that's proving the Chicago Police Department incited a riot to stop that movement from happening. The competing story there with the trials of Chicago 7. It's amazing though to see how these leaves are turned on this corruption and what that actually looks like played out, borne out in the streets and then in the courts.
Speaking of, this stuff playing out in the courts, there's one other piece of media called The Murder of Fred Hampton. It was a documentary that came out in 1970, footage from within the party. There's no narration. I found it on YouTube if you want to look at it, but it was used as evidence in the trial because they went to Hampton's apartment and took footage of the crime scene before it got all mucked up.
Oh my God.
So that it was just interesting that this film documentary then became part of the litigation. So let's just talk about, in broad strokes, the Black Panther Party history, the things that interested me from this story in particular. Not a whole recounting of the film, but what I thought, like I said, notes from the book, what was worth inquiring about. The big thing, top of the line, and I'll bring it up again at the end, was that, and I don't know if they do this as well in the movie, you can speak to this, Bill O'Neill, at the time he was recruited by the FBI, was 17 years old.
Yeah, in this first scene that he's in, he tries to hold up a bar with some gang members or something, and they realize in the middle of it, he's trying to hide his face. He's in a big duster and a coat and a hat and everything.
Yeah.
And it takes a while before people start to realize, and they literally then say on screen, oh, he's just a kid. So that is exactly how it starts, and he gets booked for that because that does not end well.
And then Hampton, when he was assassinated, he had held the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party for about a year before the police raid. When he was assassinated, he was 21.
Yeah, I was shocked by at the end they tell you exactly how old they were. It's shocking to think how
Yeah.
much pressure is on people so young. It's just like, well, where was everyone else? I mean, how did it fall on these
Right. Or
guys?
like, yeah,
It's fascinating to see like, well, who becomes the leaders at the forefront of these things. It's fascinating. They're 21, 19, 20,
yeah,
22.
yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, like the FBI is creating these massive undercover
Spending
informant.
millions of dollars.
Yeah, for these essentially, like, not in terms of their character, but just their babies. Like when it comes to the
Stop
grand
these teenagers,
scheme of life. Yeah, yeah. It's like obviously this is deeper.
They want to
than you
fix
think.
things.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
And then Jeffrey Haas, the lawyer who pursued the case against the Chicago Police Department and the FBI, he was 26 at the time.
Oh my god!
So
what is going on? Oh my god!
I just wanted to bring that out to bear. I was like, that in and of itself is wild to think about when we talk about all these people.
Everybody's in their 20s in here.
Yeah. So let's Hampton's life, what he went through. At 10 years old, he started hosting these weekend breakfasts for other kids, cooking meals himself for them, which is a precursor to the Black Panthers free breakfast program for kids in the neighborhood. But he was doing
which
this
is like
his biggest
thing that he's trying to get done is trying to get these social programs for the community on the ground. Number one, helping the kids. So that's like that is Hampton's like number one thing that he's trying to make sure gets done. That we have a place we can grow what we do through the kids. We give them a place to come, a meal to eat, and this is how community work is really, really done.
Yeah.
It was so delightful to see exactly what he was working towards, the trajectory that he was on.
And it's like when you're a kid and you're selling baseball cards on the side of the street, it's like, oh, that kid's going to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's creating free breakfast programs for the kids around him so that they can eat. Like he is a social activist at 10 years old, before the Black Panthers even exist, before even a hint of it. So, and then in high school, he led a walkout and a boycott. One, because they were calling for more Black teachers and more Black administration in the school.
Okay.
And then also they weren't allowing anybody to elect Black homecoming king and queen. And so, like I said, there was a boycott, there was a walkout, and it ended up that they elected their first Black homecoming queen because of him at this school.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then in the school, he was a part of this. He was actually the head of this interracial council, which met whenever there was racial friction between the students. He was involved in that. And a year after he graduated, the principal brought him back for a workshop with school officials, students, put together a joint plan. Like he's a student, and they're bringing him back to say, like, hey, you know how to fix this stuff, or at least give us a plan to work on this.
I feel like right there would probably lay your other option for doing a Fred Hampton biopic, which be to avoid the Black Panther stuff in its entirety and go to the precursor for all of it in school, and he's leading walkouts and he's getting a homecoming queen elected. Just echoes what he will be doing in only a few years. That would echo the loss of what he did not get to accomplish here on Earth. Looking for other ends for this story, if you wanted to totally avoid the assassination, the death, the Black Panthers, all of that, there's an interesting way in there.
Yeah. He was a stock boy at a grocery store. He washed dishes. He had factory jobs he earned to pay for college, and started a youth chapter of the NAACP in the West Suburban area. Got 200 members of students in less than a year.
He can't be stopped.
Just in terms of like his awareness of what's going on elsewhere in the world. His mother babysat for Emmett Till prior to when he was murdered at age 14 in Mississippi. So he has a direct connection to this. And he witnessed white mobs attacking MLK when he came into Chicago firsthand. He was there for that. So he's seeing all of this and being involved
firsthand,
exactly. He addressed, there was this rally in Maywood where he was to come to these teenagers, to come to the village board meeting to press, because his thing was like, oh, there's no public pool. There's no recreation center for us. Nobody's going to go to the one that's far away, and the other ones are segregated. So we need something here. So they all went down to have this board meeting, and there was too many people. And he said, we should all be able to be in here for this. We wouldn't even care if some of us are standing, but the police panicked, tear gassed the crowd. The group dispersed. was incited, broke store windows. They arrested Fred and another guy, Jim, with mob action. And so this is where the NAACP is not exactly with him anymore, even though he was inside the building and had nothing to do with what was going on outside.
The optics.
And so now the police are on him. He's consistently harassed and arrested for traffic violations by the police. So he just stopped driving because he's like, I can't be dealing with this anymore, and was put on at this point, because there were some documents found in 1995 where he was put on the FBI's agitator index as a person of interest, which is, like I said, even before he's involved in the Black Panther Party.
It's like before he can drink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What in the world?
And like I said, it seems like he's in favor of nonviolence and integration, but he just gets so much police abuse. He switches his stance.
It's this effort that I think is being drudged up and being painted more and more, is that the authorities' effort to paint these people in a certain light that will discredit them. So they keep giving him heat so that that his real true character, his nonviolent, pacifist love, that none of that comes through because people are screaming and getting arrested around him, thrown in jail. You paint them in this light, and that robs in the public eye, especially at this time. It's not like we're living in today where we could tell any lie we want on the internet. It's, you know what you know, and the news is the news. It's easier to sway public opinion in that way when the heat is on top of you, and you keep getting heat, you keep getting that reputation. Eventually that just, and we talked about that with Malcolm X. And when you think back about it, we only see him reacting to the worst things that are happening in our society. So of course we hear he's more strict and more of a quote unquote violent. But that is even in itself an attempt to discredit these figures, to discredit their natural nature, their character, which it sounds like both of them were meek, mild, shy people to a degree. Which is Fred what I'm only understanding. This is insane.
Fred Hampton was definitely outspoken, and
of course, outspoken, but leading with love, and not what they get painted with this idea of real violence, which they attracted this violence because of what they were trying to get done, not because they were spouting violence from their mouth and from their hands.
Yeah. So here's the thing with the Black Panther Party. So Chairman Fred Hampton, he became the Illinois chairman because they recruited him in '68. Like I said, in 4 years, he's gone from organizing for a Black homecoming queen to being chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panthers, and is advocating revolution.
I mean, we keep talking about that. The 60s is just like this wild decade. So we're really coming to the closing of that, and where all these leaders have just been taken out.
Mm-hmm. The Black Panther Party started in October of '66, and this is a key piece of it, which probably a lot of people aren't aware of. It was originally called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And Huey Newton was saying he named it that after the big cats because supposedly Black Panthers don't attack first but strike as a result of aggressors' actions. So he and Bobby Seale formed this in Oakland in '66. But I think that is a big part of understanding where the narrative has gotten twisted in American history, as far as they did have an open carry policy, armed citizens patrol watching cops in Oakland, and also had tons of social community programs. But the whole point was self-defense as the carrying
the original name tells you everything you needed to know, and that the shorthand of it almost who decided that? I don't know. I don't know. It feels like this hesitance to read in. It's like finish the sentence and it'll tell you everything you need to know about what the objective is here.
Yeah. I just thought it would be worth bringing up Black Panther, the superhero, because that's now what everybody affiliates the words Black Panther with. He was created in July of '66, which predates the party's creation.
Oh, fascinating.
So the superhero came out before the Black Panther Party. But in terms of the iconography and the name, there was the segregated World War II tank battalion, the Black Panthers. And then there was an organization in '65 in Alabama called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization that had the Black Panther logo, and they were on the same track as far as that sort of self-defense, cop-watching objectives.
It's from all corners in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, it's all happening. So Chairman Fred Hampton's legacy, second half of things that people don't really talk about, is the programs and the social awareness advocacy, which he started out with at age 10. He called them survival programs, sought to provide the fundamental elements of life, end quote. So free health clinics, free breakfast, political education classes. He said, quote, in 69, reading is so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before we can consider them a member. It's that Black Panther reading list.
Wow.
That Daniel Kaluuya also read. It was much more than just carrying guns in the streets to send a message. And then the breakfast program was his main jam, which could potentially pave the way for, more modern food welfare policies. There was a pilot program in Kentucky in 66 for rural kids. But now it's
we definitely had one. We had one at my at my elementary, middle, and high school. We definitely had free breakfast programs for the underprivileged, for sure.
Free lunch has existed since 1946, but breakfast was way under the radar. But now, like I said, it's 2012, $3 billion in operating costs for it. But it started as one of the Black Panther survival programs in the 60s, directly for Black communities in Chicago underneath Fred Hampton. And what's crazy is that this breakfast program is directly referenced in a memo from J. Edgar Hoover, talking about keeping this group isolated from the community which would support it, and mostly pointing it out in the Breakfast for Children program. Like, this is a huge thing that has to stop because the community is engaged in this. Like, it's just bizarre that is such a tactical, critical thing from his standpoint. That's like, oh, this is a problem.
I'm like, what is if you're just, why are you doing this? Are you really just trying to stop their culture from, like, then stop them from getting together? Like, what were they so afraid of? Were they thinking that this was a front, that the breakfast program was not a real thing, and that they were really like hiding militant things behind the background, and that this was some sort of like, just to, it's bananas to me, because either they have to be out there and saying like the breakfast program is not real. The breakfast program is just a front so that you don't see what they do behind closed doors. But I'm not hearing that, I'm like, what was this focus all about? And because I think we know what it really was, and I want to hear it I want to see it on paper. I want to read the sentences. I want to just hear the racism. Where is it? Because
so there's
I want it in plain and bold, because it's getting to the point where it's like, you're not saying what you're afraid of with all this money walking out the door, the millions of dollars and all of the government resources you're throwing at this. For what exactly? Where can I flip through to see what the objective is? It's like it's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, the COINTELPRO is what you're referring to, which was what the FBI used, and their whole thing, their agenda was to infiltrate and discredit any dissident groups, but what they deem as dissident. So yes, they were very concerned about communists, the KKK, the Nation of Islam, the Black Panthers, any group that they deemed to have some sort of ulterior agenda, as we see the list of people that they were following or that they were bugging.
Just xenophobia, rampant xenophobia.
Right.
Something different, put it on the list.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And like I said, the details of the program came to light in 71 when files were stolen from an FBI office in Pennsylvania. But let's, on the opposite end of that, the other programs, the other efforts, one that you had mentioned, the Rainbow Coalition, was an alliance between the Black Panthers, the Latino Young Lords, and the Young Patriots, which were the working class white Southerners.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that sort of boggles people's minds as well is like, his whole thing was to create this non-aggression pact among street gangs, saying like, look, this is, because he was much more into Marxist, socialist kind of viewpoints. So his whole thing was like, this is a class thing. This is about us.
Yeah, our enemy is not each other. It's the system and the people who hold the keys to the system. And the system is changeable, because guess what? We made it. They made it. It is changeable. That was what I was really, I think the film was so successful in painting Fred Hampton in his given nature of like, we are not enemies. None of us here are enemies. Our enemies lie somewhere else. Our enemies actually are in a concerted direction if we could just listen to each other for a minute.
And he also had the mindset of not having it be in sacrifice of a love of blackness or the Black community. Still saying we have our thing, but it's better that we're in solidarity than in fragmentation.
Yes.
That was another big piece that was like, oh, this guy who is not even 21 years old is getting everybody on his side. At least that's what the FBI was worried about. And then the last bit in terms of the Black Panther Party that is a bit of a misconception is the men in berets with guns. So I thought I'd bring up the women in the Black Panther Party as well, and especially under Chairman Fred Hampton's oversight in Chicago. So just in terms of, in general, women made up 2/3 of the party by 1968.
Oh my God.
So it was mostly women. And then from 1968 until the disbanding, the head editors of the Black Panther newspaper were all women.
Oh, wow.
And there's a bit from the book.
No wonder the miniseries sounds like it would work so well.
Yeah.
Like when you look at it borne out like that, like, well, obviously.
Yeah. And for the time, there was quite a push towards more womanist, feminist equality, autonomy. Like I said, especially under Fred Hampton. And this is from the book. They said one Panther woman described being in the office when the phone rang. The person who answered it walked over to Fred and said, "The brothers are here from the West Coast and they're staying at a hotel downtown. They want you to send some Panther sisters down there." And Fred responded and said, "You can tell them Panther women in Chicago are working on Panther programs, not as whores for Panther leaders."
Whoa.
He was very against and like put everybody into ship shape as it comes to equality between the sexes.
I want to pick out Dominique Fishback real quick. As she plays Deborah Johnson, Hampton's girlfriend. She delivers a really, really nuanced performance. She doesn't get to verbalize, I think, a lot of exactly what her character is there to demonstrate. But if you're clued in, it's so drenched in it that the words would only drag it down. The conflict lay inherent that he belongs to someone else. He belongs to this movement and the people, and that is heartbreaking to process that through the lens of Deborah Johnson, who is carrying his child and knowing that he may not be here tomorrow. He may not be here to see this child because he doesn't belong to me, and ultimately he doesn't belong to my child either. It's not about coming to a conclusion because there is no conclusion. It's just the tragedy and heartbreak just in that in itself, that she has to come to terms with the father of her child has more importance than just her and them. I think they do her such an amazing justice to show her exactly where she was put in the middle of this. And not exactly, I mean, we'll never know the heartbreak ever, but to give us some sort of window as to what actually was going on there, what it was.
And like I said, she's still alive. Yeah. She's still alive. She goes by Akua Nieri now. She was also a consultant on the film. She saw it. I
was only meaning to say is that it's just a hurt so deep. I don't know that it's hard to ever really convey that to. So I hope that the film does. I mean, it did for me. So I hope it does for others, showing just how horrible this all was and what sacrifice it really takes for good to really move in society. It comes at a price, and Deborah Johnson is such an exemplary character for that. I just loved what they did with her. I loved Dominique Fishback's performance in particular because so much of it was a bit nonverbal, and it was so beautifully authentic.
Oh, that's awesome. So, unfortunately, the assassination happened. She was there. She gave birth to Fred Hampton Jr. 4 weeks later. And just a reminder again, Fred Hampton was 21. William O'Neill was 20. Bill O'Neill continues to be involved with the FBI. When that documentary, Eyes on the Prize, comes out in the 80s, the day it aired, he committed suicide. And there's footage, and I think they do this in the film, of kind of like he looks frazzled in that. By 1974, the Chicago chapter had completely dissolved. But I just found a quote from this guy, Doc Satchel, who started the Panther Health Clinic in Chicago, one of these programs. And I think it speaks to the purpose of being a Black Panther and what they were doing in a very succinct way. He was saying, "The Panthers were an armed propaganda unit that raised the contradictions, set the example, and provided the vehicle that people could ride to revolution." And then he said, "We do not say the Black Panther Party will be overthrowing the government. We heighten the contradictions so people can decide if they want to change the government."
Wow.
Which I just thought was a perfect way to, like we said, like at least in my life, I've only ever seen the one side of the, so it didn't seem like a contradiction.
Right.
It's like, oh, here's people with guns in the street.
Right.
But there is a other side of it. Yeah.
It's not that at all. It's so, and I'm only going more and more as we trudge through historical times. Just to feel like we're still waging these battles in the street. It's almost as if we like understood what the name Black Panther, what the full name even was, that maybe we wouldn't, And it's not about agreeing. It's not about like switching out. It's about empathy and trying and understanding. That's really it. I wish there was more in our society that's more interested in our conflicts instead of looking for the exit. Because if we did that little extra reading, maybe it'd answer our question.
Yeah. Or a little bit extra watching in your case. And we come together, and that's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do.
Do a little bit more. Just do 1%
God.
more. So hopefully you learned something from this. I did.
Oh, man.
Definitely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Taylor. Thank you so much, guys.
You.
Thank you for listening. Hit us up at ILLITERATEPod on Instagram. Let us know what you're reading. Let us know what you're watching. You never know when we're going to do an episode on it. So thank you so much. We will catch you next week.